Greetings, cinema and AI lovers. Welcome to the new episode of Artifinema Cinetelligence, which is a podcast series we review retro and underrated sci-fi movies whose subject is AI and AR. Hope your week was fine and you're ready to discover a new movie. We want to inform you that this episode may contain spoilers, so listen on your own risk.
So imagine you're just walking down your own street, right?
Okay, I'm picturing it.
You're looking at the people passing by, but you aren't just seeing their normal faces. Floating right beside every single person is this translucent digital tag.
Oh, like a heads-up display.
Exactly. And it's displaying their name, their age, their occupation, and their exact net worth.
Wow, that's deeply uncomfortable right off the bat.
Oh, it gets worse. Every building you glance at reveals its entire structural history. Every object shows its purchase price. And you absolutely cannot turn this off. Ever.
Because it's not a pair of glasses.
Right. The hardware running this whole interface isn't in your pocket.
Yeah.
It is biologically spliced directly into your optic nerve.
Terrifying. Just completely inescapable. And every single microsecond of this visual feed is being uploaded straight to a government server. So, today we are taking a massive deep dive into the 2018 neo-noir thriller, Anon.
Which is such a fascinating film.
It really is. It constructs this terrifying parallel present where privacy hasn't just been, eroded, it has been hunted down to absolute extinction.
Yeah, the world built in Anon really forces us to confront basically the logical endgame of our current trajectory with data and surveillance.
Oh, 100%.
But to truly dissect how this film operates, we really need to establish the foundational architecture of the project itself first. We are looking at a piece of cinema written and directed by Andrew Niccol.
Right. And he is a massive name for this specific genre.
Oh, absolutely. For anyone tracking the evolution of dystopian cinema over the last 3 decades, Niccol occupies this highly specific, almost philosophical niche. He doesn't just make science fiction,
Yeah, he crafts these really intricate sociological thought experiments.
Exactly. He wrote and directed Gattaca back in '97.
Such a classic. Dissecting a society strictly stratified by genetic perfection.
Right, and then the very next year, he penned the screenplay for Peter Weir's The Truman Show.
Which is basically mapping out the psychological horror of a man trapped in a reality television simulation.
Exactly. His whole filmography, encompassing works like Simone, Lord of War, in time, it consistently orbits around this tension between human agency and these overarching, inescapable systems of control.
So Anon is basically a direct, albeit kind of controversial, continuation of that lifelong thematic obsession for him.
That's the perfect way to frame it.
And Niccol's name alone, it sets a really massive expectation for cerebral, high-concept storytelling for the listener.
It does. People expect a certain intellectual weight.
And he populated this particular thought experiment with a cast that brings a very specific tonal weight. You have Clive Owen stepping into the shoes of Detective Sal Freeland.
Clive Owen is so good at that specific energy.
He really is. He's an actor who carries this natural kind of world-weary gravity. He embodies the classic, cynical detective archetype, just trudging through this totally sterile world.
Yeah, he always looks like he hasn't slept in a week, which works perfectly here.
Totally. And playing opposite him, as the primary enigma of the narrative, is Amanda Seyfried. She's credited only as the girl or Anon.
Which is a tough role, honestly.
Extremely tough. Seyfried has to play a complete blank slate. A character whose entire survival depends on remaining utterly unreadable.
Right. She has to be invisible within a system that's literally designed to see absolutely everything.
Exactly. And the supporting roster fleshes out the bureaucratic coldness of this society. You've got Colm as Cell Superior, Detective Charles Gaddis.
Colm always plays a great bureaucrat.
Oh, nobody does it better. Plus, Sonia Walger, Mark O'Brien playing the obsessive hacker Cyrus Freer, and Ido Goldberg. It's a really robust ensemble.
Yeah, heavily leaning into those stoic, detached performances the script demands.
But the execution of that script resulted in one of the more fascinating critical divides of the 2018 cinematic landscape, didn't it?
It really did. It was incredibly polarized. Looking at the metrics, the critical consensus was remarkably punitive, really harsh.
How harsh are we talking?
Well, the film currently holds a 36% approval rating from critics on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oof.
Yeah, and that's based on roughly 50 reviews. And the broader audience score mirrors that almost perfectly at 35%.
Wow, so Critics and the general audience were kind of aligned there.
Right. And Metacritic, which uses that weighted average system, assigns it a score of 54 out of 100.
So that lands it squarely in the mixed or average territory.
Exactly. Yet the IMDb rating tells a slightly different story. It's hovering around a 6.1 out of 10.
Okay, so a bit more generous.
Yeah, this discrepancy kind of points to a film that alienated traditional critics who were seeking a specific type of narrative momentum.
Like explosions and car chases, probably.
Right. But it still found a dedicated pocket of viewers who were totally captivated by its atmospheric and philosophical ambitions.
I mean, that polarization makes total sense when you look at the unusual pipeline this movie traveled just to reach audiences.
Oh, the distribution history is wild.
It really is. We are talking about an international co-production pulling resources from Canada, Germany, and the United States, and they were operating on a reported budget of roughly $20 million.
Which, in the realm of independent sci-fi, $20 million is a substantial war chest.
Huge. It allows for high-end visual effects and a marquee cast. But the distribution strategy completely subverted expectations for a film of the scale.
Because instead of a massive, risky theatrical campaign in North America, what did they do?
The producers entered into an agreement with Netflix. The streaming giant acquired the U.S. and select international territory rights for a surprisingly modest $4 million.
Just $4 million. That's quite a drop from a $20 million budget.
Right. But that acquisition strategy was emblematic of a very specific era in digital distribution.
Yeah, 2018 Netflix was a different beast.
Totally. Netflix was aggressively curating this bespoke catalog of high-concept, mid-budget science fiction.
Oh, I remember. Positioning Anon alongside other exclusive genre acquisitions like Duncan Jones and Mute.
Yeah, and David Ayer's Bright.
Right.
By routing the film directly to the streaming platform in the North American market, it completely bypassed the traditional U.S. theatrical gauntlet.
Which makes sense because the theatrical arena is notoriously unforgiving for cerebral, slow-burn thrillers.
Especially ones that lack the explosive set pieces of franchise tentpoles, like you said. Netflix provided a guaranteed, immediate global footprint.
But it did actually see the inside of a cinema in other parts of the world, right?
It did. Altitude Film Distribution and Sky Cinema handled a limited theatrical run in the UK and Ireland. And if you look at the international box office receipts, the film generated approximately $1.2 million globally.
Interesting. Where did it do best?
Its most robust theatrical performance actually occurred in Russia and the Commonwealth of Independent States market.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a whole separate conversation to be had about why a bleak, oppressive narrative about state surveillance resonated so strongly in those specific territories.
I mean, it's pretty evocative of a certain political climate.
For sure. But it really underscores how distribution models completely alter the cultural footprint of a movie.
Absolutely. Though, honestly, the critical reception and the distribution strategy are secondary to the aesthetic framework Nickel employs here.
Let's talk about that aesthetic. Critics universally categorize Anon as a neo-noir thriller.
Right. And for listeners who might be new to some of this cinema terminology, we should define what that actually means.
Definitely. So the term neo-noir, the prefix neo, simply indicates a modern or futuristic revival of the classic film noir genre.
And film noir being that movement that dominated American cinema back in the 1940s and 50s.
Exactly. Those original post-war films think of titles like The Maltese Falcon or Double Indemnity. They were completely defined by this profound moral ambiguity. You had these fatalistic anti-heroes, dangerous femme fatales, and a visual grammar heavily reliant on stark shadows.
Lots of tilted camera angles, too, and a pervasive sense of urban alienation.
Right. So Nickel takes all of that mid-century cinematic vocabulary and surgically implants it into a digital future.
It's such a cool concept. Clive Owen is basically playing the classic Bogart-style gumshoe.
But instead of wearing out the soles of his shoes walking the rainy streets looking for physical clues, he is sitting in a sterile, concrete apartment endlessly scrolling through digital memory files.
It's so dystopian, and Amanda Seyfried is the classic femme fatale, mysterious and potentially lethal.
But her weapon isn't a pearl-handled revolver. It's her ability to manipulate code and erase her own digital footprint.
So the movie strips the classic detective story of its physical grime and just replaces it with this digital sterility.
Yeah, but that core isolation of the genre, it remains entirely intact.
To understand why that isolation feels so profound, We really have to dissect the central technological premise that governs this universe.
The terrifying part.
Yeah. Nicole situates the narrative in what he has termed a parallel present.
Right, so this is not a distant, unrecognizable, centuries-later utopia. It feels uncomfortably adjacent to our own timeline.
Very adjacent. The foundational rule of this parallel present is the total legal and functional eradication of human privacy.
Poof, gone.
Exactly. The state has implemented a ubiquitous biological integration system. Every single citizen possesses a neural implant, colloquially referred to as a mind's eye.
Which functions as the hardware for a broader network known as biosyn, right?
Yes. It is an inescapable recording device wired directly into the human brain. The mind's eye captures every single visual and auditory stimulus a person experiences.
So literally every conversation, every glance, every intimate moment is digitized at the source.
Right. But it's not just acting as a local hard drive for your own memories. This implant continuously transmits this staggering volume of sensory data to a centralized, cloud-based panopticon called the ether.
The ether. It sounds so ominous. It basically operates as an infallible, universal archive of human experience.
Totally. The very concept of subjective memory is rendered obsolete.
Right, because if an event occurred, an objective, high-definition recording exists within the ether.
Furthermore, law enforcement possesses unfettered, instantaneous access to this archive.
Which is wild. As various film critics pointed out during the movie's release, this society has completely abandoned the concept of civil rights regarding data access.
Yeah, the search warrant is just a relic of the past. The police do not need probable cause to view your memories. Your memories are inherently state property.
That is deeply chilling.
Yeah.
And this invisible data structure manifests visually through a relentless use of augmented reality.
Or AR, yeah. And for anyone wondering, AR technology, unlike virtual reality, which replaces your environment entirely, AR superimposes computer-generated images and data over your physical surroundings.
Basically layering a digital world on top of the real one.
Exactly. And Nicole turns the entire film into a first-person AR experience. When Sal Freeland walks through a train station, we see the world straight through his mind's eye.
Yeah, digital user interfaces constantly pop up. They latch onto the faces of strangers, identifying their biometric data, their employment history, their criminal record.
It literally turns physical reality into a massive interactive search engine.
I mean, if crime is effectively eliminated because the police can just mentally rewind the suspect's footage, doesn't that make the detective's job incredibly boring?
It completely does. And that's actually a huge point we'll get into. But just sticking with the AR for a second, the sheer density of information presented in these overlays is staggering.
Oh, it's overwhelming.
Michael Coldwell, in a piece for Starburst magazine, highlighted how meticulously Nicole constructed this visual barrage. Like, Nicole personally wrote the text and graphics for the point-of-view shots.
Wow, he wrote all that background text himself.
Yeah, injecting this layer of bleak algorithmic logic into the background details. Coldwell pointed to a specific sequence involving a sex worker where a quick freeze frame reveals her AR biography advertising a military discount.
Oh, man, that is so dark.
It is. The world is saturated with this transactional, invasive data. Every human being is reduced to a floating resume of their most quantifiable traits.
But the terrifying part is how familiar it feels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we look at the mind's eye and recoil at the invasion, but we are essentially doing the same thing with the supercomputer sitting in our pocket.
Oh, without a doubt.
We broadcast our locations, our dietary habits, our social networks, and our faces to corporate servers on a minute-by-minute basis.
Yeah.
We voluntarily provide the data.
Nicole simply removes the middleman of the smartphone. He bypasses the screen in your hand and hardwires the screen directly into your visual cortex.
And this extrapolation is precisely what Nicole intended to explore. He explicitly stated that the conceptual genesis of the film was rooted in contemporary data harvesting controversies.
Specifically referencing the Cambridge Analytica scandal, I believe.
Yes, exactly. The film forces the audience to confront the end of privacy, not as a sudden, violent government takeover, but as a gradual, voluntary exchange.
Titus Tachura, analyzing the film for the Catholic World Report, argued that the narrative exposes the Faustian bargain of the modern age.
Right. We willingly trade our anonymity, our secrecy, and our civil liberties in exchange for absolute safety, convenience, and frictionless social interaction.
It's a terrifying trade. But let's go back to your point about the actual function of law enforcement in a society that has achieved this absolute safety.
Yes, because the film establishes early on that violent crime has been virtually eliminated.
Yeah, if a robbery occurs, the process of solving it is almost comically simple. The detective logs into the ether, accesses the victim's mind's eye recording to identify the perpetrator.
Then accesses the perpetrator's mind's eye to track their location and secure the confession.
Right. The traditional mechanics of a murder mystery like interrogating suspects, gathering forensic evidence, deduction, are completely obsolete.
Which, like I said, raises a massive narrative problem. If the police can just hit a mental rewind button to solve any crime, the detective's job becomes incredibly tedious.
It is just an exercise in bureaucratic monotony.
Exactly.
Ian Sedensky, writing for Culture Crypt, acutely observed this dynamic. The ubiquitous surveillance keeps the populace compliant, but it renders Detective Freeland's profession absurdly easy.
Yeah, Sedensky noted that deducing the identity of a shooter requires nothing more than staring straight ahead and letting the software scrub the timeline.
The detective is no longer an investigator. He's an archivist. He's basically an IT technician tasked with reviewing security footage.
He is basically doing search engine optimization for homicides.
That is hilarious, but it's totally accurate. The thrill of the hunt is completely dead.
Which is why the introduction of an unsolvable crime is the only mechanism that can jolt Freeland out of his professional apathy.
Right. The film uses this premise to interrogate how technology, in its relentless pursuit of efficiency and security, inherently strips away the human element of discovery.
Brian Eggert, in his analysis for Deep Focus Review, drew a really compelling parallel between Anon and Philip K. Dick's Minority Report.
Oh, that's a brilliant comparison.
Isn't it? Both narratives construct a purportedly flawless, all-seeing apparatus designed to preemptively or instantly neutralize criminal activity.
Only to reveal the profound vulnerabilities and the loss of humanity embedded within such perfect systems.
The brilliance of the film lies in how Nickel makes us feel the suffocating weight of this perfect system. I mean, you can't just have characters talking about data flows. The cinematography has to actually communicate the oppression.
Yes. And to achieve this, the entire visual language of the film is built around subjective cinematography.
Or POV cinematography, right? And for the listener, POV stands for point of view. It's a camera angle that shows what a character is looking at directly through their own eyes.
Exactly. The camera doesn't just observe the characters from a distance, it violently forces us behind their eyes. We are constantly trapped in the digital perspective of the mind's eye.
And subjective cinematography is utilized here not merely as like a stylistic flourish, it's actually the primary instrument of the film's horror.
Absolutely, because the central mystery revolves around a series of murders that defy the infallible logic of the ether. The killer isn't just avoiding the cameras.
The killer is weaponizing them.
Yes.
The concept of POV hijacking is easily one of the most disturbing science fiction concepts I've seen in recent years.
It makes your skin crawl. The assassin possesses the capability to hack into the victim's optic nerve in real time.
Right, so as the killer approaches, they replace the victim's visual feed with their own.
The victim is completely paralyzed. They're forced to watch their own execution from the perspective of the person pulling the trigger.
It is the ultimate violation. You are robbed of your own physical perspective moments before you are robbed of your life.
The psychological terror of those sequences is profound. A reviewer for Grimdark magazine highlighted that regardless of any perceived structural flaws in the broader narrative, the sheer visceral dread of witnessing a character's biological vision being overwritten is masterfully executed.
Yeah, it represents the complete and total loss of bodily autonomy. The eyes, which are traditionally the window to the soul, become a compromised firewall.
And Nicole reflects this internal digital violation in the external physical design of the world itself.
Oh, the physical world of Anon is punishingly bleak. There is a relentless, suffocating grayness to absolutely everything.
Brian Eggert specifically noted the film's antiseptic, desaturated color palette. The environments are entirely devoid of warmth, vibrancy, or organic life.
We are essentially watching a movie take place inside a giant concrete filing cabinet.
That aesthetic choice is deeply intentional, though. He heavily relies on brutalist architecture to convey the thematic weight of the surveillance state.
Right. Let's break down brutalism for the listener. Brutalism is an architectural style that gained prominence in the mid-20th century. It's characterized by these massive, monolithic, blocky appearances.
Rigid geometric lines.
Exactly. And the unapologetic, large-scale use of raw, exposed, poured concrete. It was designed to project permanence, functionality, and often an overwhelming sense of institutional authority.
It is literally architecture designed to make the individual feel incredibly small.
To capture this specific flavor of concrete dread, the production team utilized locations in the Greater Toronto Area. According to university publications, significant portions of the film were shot at the University of Toronto Scarborough campus.
Specifically leveraging the Andrews Building, I believe.
Yes, the Andrews Building is a masterclass in brutalist design. Conceived by the Australian architect John Andrews in the 1960s, it functions as this interconnected, almost subterranean feeling complex of raw concrete.
Location managers like John Rakich consider it a crown jewel of the aesthetic in the region.
Oh, it's stunning in a bleak way. It is no coincidence that this specific architecture repeatedly attracts dystopian narratives.
Yeah.
Like, the campus previously served as a backdrop for Guillermo del Toro's The Shape of Water.
And the expansive space opera, The Expanse, right?
Yeah. And even David Cronenberg's inaugural feature film, Stereo.
The concrete serves as the physical manifestation of the inescapable ether. It is hard, cold, and completely unyielding.
But against this backdrop of sterile digital tracking and brutalist stone, Nicol injects these fascinating elements of retrofuturism.
Yeah, that contrast is so striking. The technology is vastly superior to ours, yet the styling is aggressively vintage.
Right, the detectives aren't wearing sleek cyberpunk tactical gear. They're wearing immaculate mid-century tailored suits.
The vehicular design is where this retrofuturism is most pronounced, honestly.
Yes, the cars. The streets are totally devoid of aerodynamic self-driving pods. Instead, the characters navigate the city in these beautifully preserved automobiles from the 1950s and 70s.
Observers at the blog Rivets on the poster cataloged the specific models.
Oh, I love that level of detail. What do they find?
They noted the prominent use of a classic French Citroën DS, the elegant Facel Vega, and the imposing brutalist lines of a first-generation Oldsmobile Toronado driven by Clive Owen's character.
But the catch is, they aren't internal combustion engines anymore. The AR overlay reveals the modifications.
Right. These massive steel chassis have been gutted and retrofitted with advanced electric or hydrogen power plants.
When they accelerate, you don't hear a roaring V8 engine. You hear this high-pitched synthetic electric whine. It's so weird. And the chrome bumpers and classic grills are illuminated by sleek, modern LED light strips.
It creates a deeply unsettling dissonance. The Catholic World Report analysis posited a brilliant theory about this, actually.
As their take.
They suggested that in a world that has digitized human experience to the point of profound alienation, these tactile, heavy, vintage machines and formal suits are the last desperate attempts to cling to a sense of physical history and romanticize masculinity.
That is a phenomenal analysis. It strikes right at the heart of the film's visual philosophy. When society forcibly strips away the chaotic, unpredictable nature of human emotion and secret-keeping, the culture reflexively fetishizes the aesthetic trappings of a bygone, messier era.
However, this commitment to a drab, concrete, and gray visual palette was the primary source of friction for a lot of critics.
It was a massive sticking point. Critics like Ian Sedensky from Culture Crypt really tore into this creative decision.
Yeah, he argued that it strains credulity to present a society with such advanced neurological technology only to have their physical world look depressingly regressive and dull.
His critique basically asked if the invention of the mind's eye exhausted all of humanity's creative energy, causing fashion designers, architects, and urban planners to simply give up.
He felt the visual monotony really exacerbated the deliberate pacing of the script, resulting in a tedious viewing experience.
So, is the film visually boring? Or is the visual dullness a brilliant thematic choice reflecting how total surveillance drains the color and humanity out of life?
It highlights the inherent risk of aligning form so perfectly with function. Sedensky argued that Anon might have been better suited as a literary work where the reader's imagination could populate the bleakness. Film is intrinsically a visual medium, and starving the audience of color and warmth can lead to profound alienation.
I would argue, however, that the visual dullness is the point. The lack of color is the physical manifestation of the lack of privacy.
I think I completely agree with you.
If you look at a vibrant, colorful city, that vibrancy comes from individuality, from secrets, from people expressing their hidden selves. In a world where every thought and action is filed away in a government server, what is the point of expression?
The world is gray because the soul of the society has been audited out of existence.
Exactly. By the way, if you liked and interested so far, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. It's really important for us to continue this series.
So it is precisely against this backdrop of perfectly ordered, relentlessly documented, and agonizingly drab existence that the system encounters a fatal error.
A glitch of the Matrix.
A single anomaly appears that threatens to unravel the entire panoptic structure, bringing us to the core narrative engine of the film.
The ghost in the digital machine. Detective Sal Freeland is walking down the street, surrounded by the constant hum of AR data tags identifying every single person in his field of vision.
And then a woman walks past him.
Yeah. Her data tag doesn't show a name or an occupation. It simply flashes. Unknown error.
She is a complete digital void. Played by Amanda Seyfried, she is known only as the girl, or Anon. She possesses absolutely no digital footprint in the ether.
Her existence is a statistical impossibility within the framework of the Biosyn architecture. In a society where safety is predicated on total transparency, anonymity is the ultimate weapon of mass disruption.
As Freeland investigates, he discovers that she is not merely a system glitch. She is an apex hacker manipulating the very fabric of the ether.
And the movie is smart enough to provide a mechanical explanation for her invisibility. You can't just power down the mind's eye. It is biological hardware. So how does she hide?
She explains to Sal that she evades the continuous surveillance sweep by taking her personal data stream, slicing it into microscopic fragments, and disseminating those microsecond slices throughout the massive, chaotic data streams of millions of other citizens.
She hides in plain sight by becoming part of the background noise of the entire population.
It is an elegant technological sleight of hand. She scatters her digital existence like chaff to confuse radar.
But she doesn't just use this skill to live off the grid. She has weaponized her anonymity to create a highly lucrative, entirely illegal black market service.
She operates as a digital cleaner for the elite.
She is a digital hitman for memories. If a powerful CEO commits corporate espionage or a wealthy politician engages in a scandalous affair, the evidence is permanently burned into their own mind's eye recordings.
They can't lie about it because the ether has the tape.
So they hire Anon. She hacks into the central servers, locates the specific recorded memories of their transgressions, and surgically deletes them from the permanent record.
And the narrative tension really escalates because someone is systematically hiring Anon to delete specific memories for wealthy clients and then brutally murdering those clients immediately afterward.
Right. Because Anon has scrubbed the timeline leading up to the murder, and the killer utilizes the POV hijacking technique during the act. The police are left with an unprecedented scenario.
A completely clean crime scene.
There is zero data. It is the perfect locked room mystery translated into a digital context.
Freeland realizes the only way to catch the killer is to bait the trap. He has to go deep undercover, adopting a false identity, and hire Anon to delete a fabricated memory of his own to draw her out into the physical world.
And this undercover operation exposes the deeply tragic core of Freeland's character. We'll learn that Freeland is a defective detective. He's a broken man, mourning the death of his young son in a sudden tragic accident.
The presence of the ether fundamentally alters the grieving process for Freeland. He is not merely haunted by the memory of his child.
He is trapped in a state of perpetual, high-definition reenactment.
That is the most devastating aspect of the technology.
When Sal sits alone in his brutalist apartment, he isn't just reminiscing. He pulls up the specific objective recordings of his son playing, of the moments before the accident, of the dissolution of his marriage, and he watches them.
He plays them in his own mind over and over again in perfect clarity. That technology refuses to allow the memory to fade.
It serves as a profound commentary on the psychological necessity of memory degradation. The human mind utilizes forgetting as a critical defense mechanism.
The gradual softening of traumatic details is essential for emotional survival and healing. Freeland is denied that grace.
The state mandates perfect recall for the sake of security. But the collateral damage is the individual's inability to move past trauma.
It turns the concept of Anon's illegal business entirely on its head. The government classifies her as a dangerous subversive because she deletes data.
But when you look at a man like Sal Freeland, slowly being crushed by the weight of permanent perfect memory, the ability to delete a traumatic event isn't a crime. It is an act of profound mercy.
In a world where you can never forget anything, the service Anon provides would actually be a highly sought-after superpower.
Exactly. In a society burdened by total recall, the power to forget would be the most valuable commodity on Earth. Hey, listener, do you have any other idea or question about this? Please write in comments.
Tracing the thematic lineage of this idea reveals a fascinating continuity in Andrew Niccol's career. He is a filmmaker fundamentally preoccupied with the mechanisms by which a society codifies and restricts human potential.
And how individuals attempt to subvert those mechanisms. If we look back at Gattaca, the system of control was entirely biological. The society operated on a genetic caste system.
Your DNA, analyzed at birth, dictated your social standing, your career, your entire future. The record was written in your blood.
The protagonist, Vincent, had to physically scrub his own biometric data using barred blood and skin cells to cheat the system and achieve his dream of space travel.
Then, Niccol shifted his focus to an external, manufactured reality with his script for The Truman Show.
In that narrative, the panopticon was environmental. Truman Burbank was imprisoned within a massive, physical geodesic dome, his every movement monitored by thousands of hidden cameras and broadcast to a global audience.
The control is exerted from the outside in, orchestrated by a central, godlike director in a control room in the sky.
And with Anon, Niccol achieves the ultimate, horrifying synthesis of those two ideas. He takes the omnipresent surveillance cameras from the sky in The Truman Show, and he surgically implants them into the biological framework of Gattaca.
The panopticon is no longer an external building or a television set. It is internalized.
The government doesn't need to follow you. You are broadcasting your own surveillance feed from inside your own skull.
The battleground for human agency has moved from the blood to the environment, directly to the optic nerve.
This thematic evolution culminates in the philosophical showdown at the climax of the film. After the labyrinthine plot resolves, revealing that the murders were committed by Cyrus, a fellow hacker dangerously obsessed with Anon and enraged by her interactions with Freeland and the girl, are left to confront the fundamental incompatibility of their worldviews.
Freeland is an agent of the state sworn to uphold the sanctity of the digital record. The girl is the living embodiment of the record's failure.
In the final moments, Freeland makes a choice that entirely subverts his role as a detective. He allows her to walk away.
He watches as she initiates her code, actively erasing her digital presence from his mind's eye, vanishing back into the background noise of the ether.
He lets the anomaly survive.
Freeland's acquiescence is a recognition of the necessity of her rebellion. The girl operates as a radical skeptic within an algorithmic dictatorship.
Throughout the film, the state's implicit argument relies on a pervasive, insidious logic. If you desire privacy, it is solely because you are engaged in illicit activity.
It is the classic authoritarian refrain. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear.
We hear variations of that argument constantly in our own society whenever legislation regarding digital encryption or data privacy is debated. The assumption is always that secrecy equals guilt.
The girl fundamentally rejects that equation. When Freeland finally asks her the central question, why she goes to such exhausting, dangerous lengths to maintain her anonymity, her response serves as the philosophical thesis of the entire film.
She states, "It's not that I have something to hide, it's that I don't have anything I want you to see."
That distinction is incredibly powerful.
It really is. She isn't hiding stolen state secrets or the proceeds of a bank robbery. She is asserting that the simple, quiet possession of one's own life is a fundamental human right.
She claims ownership over her own banality. Whether her actions are legal or illegal, profound or mundane, they belong to her.
In a technocratic society that views transparency as the ultimate civic duty, the mere desire to be left alone to reign unobserved becomes an act of profound, radical defiance.
It recontextualizes the entire concept of the classic noir detective. Freeland is a private eye, employed by the state to eliminate privacy.
The girl is engaged in a desperate, relentless battle to keep her actual physical eye private, and the linguistic choices surrounding the film's title further reinforce this impending sense of doom.
On the surface, the title Anon is simply a modern abbreviation of anonymous. It is the moniker of the girl, the identifier of hacker collectives, and a representation of the digital void she occupies.
But there's a secondary, archaic definition that changes the entire context of the movie.
Yes. The Catholic World Report analysis adeptly highlighted this etymological double meaning. In Old English, the word anon translates to soon or shortly.
It appears frequently in classical literature, a character stating, "I shall return anon."
When you apply that definition to the title of a dystopian film about the total eradication of privacy and the inescapable nature of state surveillance, it ceases to be just a character name.
It becomes a prophecy. It is a stark, terrifying warning from the filmmaker that the architecture of this digital prison is not a distant, speculative fiction. It is arriving soon.
Which brings us to a deeply unsettling reality. We can analyze the brutalist architecture of Anon and comfort ourselves with the fact that we don't have government hardware literally wired into our brainstems.
But if we look objectively at our current behavior, we are already building the infrastructure of the ether. We don't need the state to force us into a panopticon. We are eagerly constructing it ourselves, brick by brick, update by update.
The complicity of the populace is the most chilling aspect of modern surveillance.
We buy voice-activated microphones and place them in our kitchens and bedrooms just so we can ask for the weather forecast without looking at a screen. We willingly geotag our locations on every vacation photo we upload.
We document our political leanings, our social circles, and our daily routines on platforms designed specifically to harvest and monetize that data.
We consent to terms of service agreements that allow algorithmic engines to scan our private communications to serve us targeted advertisements.
We are trading the fundamental right of self-possession for minor conveniences and the dopamine hit of social engagement.
The narrative of Anon suggests that the ultimate threat to liberty isn't necessarily a totalitarian dictator, but the seductive logic of perfect security and frictionless living.
We're outsourcing our memory and our privacy to server farms.
So the question you have to ask yourself as you navigate your own increasingly transparent life is whether the dystopian future Nicole envisioned is actually in the future at all. Have we already crossed the threshold?
And if the state or the corporation demands that we must perpetually be seen and recorded to participate in society, then the true beginning of crime isn't the act of stealing or violence.
The true beginning of crime is the simple, radical act of closing your eyes and refusing to be watched. See you on next episode. If you enjoyed the episode, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Check out the video description for the Letterboxd list with all the movies we've covered in this series. See you on next video. Bye-bye.